Championship. Over the course of the next 12 rounds, we'll be taking in 3 continents and 6 different countries. Round 1 sees us head to the epic Brands Hatch in the UK. Why the authorities spend millions of pounds turning Silverstone into a great circuit when we already have one in Brands Hatch is a mystery to me. Not my words, but the words of the late great Murray Walker. And who could argue with him? Rated as one of the finest driver circuits to have graced the motor racing calendar, Brands Hatch is thankfully little changed from its classic format. I'm Tim Cox, we've got Sean Cranleigh-Swash in the production booth, but right now I'm joined, not only for tonight, but for the entirety of the season, by our resident single-seater expert here at Total Sim Sport with race victories in Formula Renault 2.0, 3.5 and Formula 3 as well. It's Chris Rowlands. Chris, an epic season ahead of us, but Brands Hatch, it's a short, fast, but tricky track at times where you have to get it almost pretty much inch perfect for the whole lap to get a really good lap time in.
So good evening, Tim. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attributing to me some Formula Renault 2.0 wins that have definitely never happened. I'll take the other two, though. No, everything you're saying about Brands is spot on. I love this track, and not just because it's geographically my closest real-life circuit, but it's such a rhythm track, and I think it's going to really reward drivers who can get in the groove if you qualify well. There's probably going to be some carnage on the first lap or two. There always will be in the first race of a season. And yeah, I think we're in for a massive treat tonight. This is such a fun circuit. Quite difficult to overtake, I suppose, it's fair to say. But in 20-minute sprint races, of which we can bring you 2 this evening, it's not necessarily about how well you can overtake. It's more, I think, about survival.
As you mentioned, we've got 2 20-minute sprint races lined up for you today. And qualifying, that's just currently underway, so drivers out on track individually and just currently yet to have a time posted to the board. Drivers out onto their first flying laps pretty much as it stands. Here's one from Steve Hefford in the number 72 car. Be interesting to see how he gets on, as many of other drivers do. Of course, during the season opener, Chris, everyone sort of getting a bit of a feel for everyone and understanding, how people race, whether they like to send it or not maybe, and just generally just trying to get a bit of a feel for one another.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the joys of league racing compared to racing and the iRacing officials, is that you develop those relationships with the other drivers, but hopefully for better, but also for worse. So you know who you can race hard with, you build that element of trust with everyone else, and also because you've got stewarding, there's a little bit more accountability, which I think leads to higher quality racing. I mean, we've seen in other leagues where, you're race hard but fair. Maybe in the officials you see less of that fair racing, but you don't, especially in race 1, you don't want to be the villain of the piece. And I do think we're going to really sort out the men from the boys proverbially here, because this circuit, as we've already said, it requires so much precision. So we'll get an idea through qualifying, because they've got 15 minutes and I believe 20 laps within that. It's a theoretical maximum anyway, to set a time. So you'd like to think we're going to get a reasonable idea of people's raw pace from this qualifying session. Of course, only time will tell.
Will do indeed, and the grid obviously for race 1 made up from qualifying. Race 2, we've got the top 10 reversed, so it'll be well worth during racing conditions in race 1. Just keeping an eye out for who's in 10th place, because they will be taking pole position for race 2. As we just see Yang heading to the top of the timing sheets at 1:16.579. Incredibly close stuff between our top 3 right now. Yang, Hardy and Sampson separated by just a fraction under 0.4 of a second, albeit by 1,000th of a second, but even so, it's still incredibly close out there. There's Nightcamp, there we go. That is the new time to beat, and what a lap from him, a 1:15.6. Wow, 0.6 of a second clear of anyone else. The Seal just, we've got times popping in left, right, and centre. Seal headed up onto the front row before being instantly displaced by Watts. What's going there with only a 10th off qualifying pole time, the 1:15.7. As we're just seeing Dewsbury round now going round to complete his final lap. Hasn't got a time yet on the board, and yet again, no luck for him whatsoever as Cullinan, he cuts the timing beam, and that's good enough for 7th. going to put him up onto the 4th row of the grid. Great lap at the depth from him. Let's just see the last of the drive starting to come across the line now. Let's see where Littler comes. That's good enough for 16th as well. A change at the top. Yang, new fastest time. 1:15.637. That's a 500th of a second. So half a tenth quicker than Nijkamp. He's just coming round to complete his final lap through the final corner. Let's see what he can do as he heads down the start-finish straight. That's good enough to snatch pole away from Yang right at the depth there. As we see what's getting promoted up into third, that second row of the grid. But wow, what a lap there from the Dutchman right at the depth, Chris. A 1:15.2.
Well, this is actually slower than they were going in practice. We were into the 14s at one point. Nijkamp certainly was. I mean, he was the quickest driver in practice by some distance. Although this, it doesn't mean he's wrapped it up. We did see a couple of off tracks where he was pushing a bit harder, and at one point his car was wrecked. And that is one thing, you can't rest on your laurels at this track. You're probably seeing a few people perhaps still out of position through qualifying because it's so easy to rack up a 1x off track here. So many of the corners where if you just push that little bit too hard, that lap is in the dust. But we've still got just under 9 minutes of qualifying left to go, so I think it's fair to say we're far from finished. I mean, there's been purple sectors from quite a variety of drivers. I mean, Joe Watts has got a purple sector at the moment, so does Michael Seal. They're in 3rd and 6th respectively, so there's clearly a decent variety of pace at the top here, and I don't think qualifying is settled just yet.
As you mentioned that, Nijkamp, he's just back a couple of purple sectors for him. He's just about to come across the line, but just having a little look at his lap time. No, he goes 2/10 slower than his previous best. Really close stuff as Watts just gets himself promoted up onto the front row into 2nd right now. And I think it's worth mentioning this series about one of its sponsors. Of course, there's many for Ansei 3D. If you're looking to replace your current Logitech round wheel with an F1 style wheel for a fun experience, you can choose from different teams or simply get a neutral color. They also offer paddle shifter magnetic mod improvement to improve your shifting experience, and don't forget their gaming mini button box. It's a simple, small, elegant and very useful box that includes all of your aluminium profile for your rig to get it bolted up onto that. You find out more about them by heading across to Ansei, that's ANSE3D.com. That's qualifying. We're heading well into the second half of this right now. Drivers have 20 minutes, limited amount of laps. The big question is, who is gonna come out on top? I mean, the way that, just having watched during practice, Chris, I think Nijkamp's definitely going to be one of the drivers to watch, not only tonight, but I think potentially all season long as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and we've got got quite a decent variety of tracks we're visiting as well. So just because you're good at Brands Hatch doesn't necessarily mean you've got equal pace around other tracks. So I mean, next week, for example, we're at Silverstone. Very, very different profile of track, even though it's probably geographically the closest on the calendar. So just because you're good at the sort of these precision circuit like Brands doesn't necessarily mean you've got the same level of pace elsewhere in the circuit. I mean, there are some tracks I'm very interested to see how it's going to go. So in June we're going to be at Bathurst, and I'm really looking forward to that as a season finisher. That's going to be a very interesting race indeed.
It is. There's definitely some interesting tracks being thrown up within the calendar. I mean, Lime Rock, that we know that's going to be fast and furious. We visit there for round 6 in late April. But I think the interesting one for me, Chris, potentially, is we just see Nijkamp running. Well, that's going to be a deletion of his time. Will be Metegi, a track, I think, I'm not wrong in saying, highly underused within iRacing.
I think it's a very underrated track. I mean, the Formula Renault 3.5 officials visited there for 2 seasons in a row, and I was surprised by how much it was attended, because it's not a circuit many people own, and it's sort of a negative feedback loop of, because no one races there. But it really suits open wheel cars. It's so wide open. You've got lots of braking points. into 90-degree corners, which you'd think would be quite monotonous, but it flows really nicely. So it's not just a good track to race on, it's a good track to watch racing on as well, which I think for our viewers is possibly more important than the quality of the racing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, Lime Rock as well, because it's the site of one of my very, very rare victories in iRacing. So I will be delighted to see F3 there again. It's been a good, I think, 18 months since the officials visited Lime Rock in the F3. So I'll be interested to see if some of these drivers are a little bit rusty about how to drive this car around there. Although I suppose I'd say it's not the longest lap, so there's not necessarily a huge amount of time that goes into learning that track.
No, so you see, Nijkamp, a bit of a mixed bag there. Either no improvement or the best of anyone. And well, it's not quicker than his previous best, but 0.06 of a second slower. I mean, that's consistency against your best timers. We just see Yang heading through now at the back end of the circuit. Just coming round into Hawthorne Bend. One of the many tricky circuits on there, on the one of the tricky corners on the circuit, Chris. Hawthorne Bend, it requires a lot of a commitment, I've found.
Yeah, although, I mean, certainly on the first few laps, that's going to be treacherous on cold tyres, because once you've got a bit less fuel in the tank and once your tyres are warmed up, it's actually quite a nice one. I think it's actually Westfield and Sheens are the really tricky two in that whole complex, because if you've got to really be aggressive to save time through there. I mean, this is a problem I have as a racing driver, and it's why I'm not up at, say, sort of Nijkamp or Yang or what's his level here, because the bravery you need to be able to get a fast lap time around here is extreme. But it's why we've been saying about it's such a rhythm track, because once you get a feel for the grip levels of your car, the lap time just absolutely shoots downwards. I mean, we saw that at the start of qualifying. The first few pole times were the high 16s, and we're what, a second and a half quicker than that now, and it's only a 75-second lap, so it's not as though a second and a half is it's a big percentage change basically. But yeah, I think first lap or so we're going to see. I think we are going to see some drivers go off the track, because it's quite a big grid, it's quite a big spread of abilities as well, and Paddock Hill in particular on lap one, it's not the easiest first corner available in a Grand Prix calendar, that's for sure.
No, it's not, and of course we've got obviously the recent changes to the F3 during, I was about to say, to the tyre model, etc. How do you think that's going to impact it? I mean, from where I've been speaking to a variety of F3 drivers, it's a lot of them feel it's an improvement, but the tyres take a lot longer to come in. But my golly, there seems to be quite a bit more grip available to them when they do come in.
Well, I think where this is only 20-minute races, that might actually be to their detriment to an extent. I think it will level the playing field, because drivers who've just spent months and months driving the F3 car have suddenly got, all their muscle memory is going to be wrong for the feel on this car, whereas maybe some drivers who've just recently graduated to F3 or don't race it that regularly, they haven't got to unlearn that. Like, for them, this is just what the F3 car is like. So I think that's going to level the playing field ever so slightly. I do think it does make it a bit more of a challenge that we're here first, but I say that it's a good thing, because we want to challenge the drivers. They're going to have to be at the absolute top of their game to get a good result here. But of course, it's one interesting thing I think to look out for is that there's a point available for fastest lap, but there's also a point available for the fastest lap outside the top 10. So it's not so you're completely frozen out of point scoring if you aren't able to break into that top 10. So that's something to look out for later in the race.
Well, just as we're talking about that, Chris Seal heads to the top of the timing sheets with 1:15.1. A great lap from him. The Results Clothing driver, well, they're locking out the front row right now, the Results Clothing team, with first and second place. What a way to potentially start the season, but still all to play for. Still got a minute left of qualifying here, round one at Brands Hatch. Still, we can see a change for that. Yang or Dewsbury maybe displace them. We're just watching Dewsbury right now. So he has back out the previous lap. Might just call him running wide out of 30s onto the grass. So obviously knew that full well that would be a deletion of his time. Plus he would have lost a whole host of time as he comes round Hawthorne Bend. It's a tricky part of the circuit that you were mentioning, Chris. Just through Westfield, heading through Dingledown now to Sheen. It's got basically a come across the crest there, and it's a blind entry. You can't see the apex, and definitely a tricky one as you head around Stirling's. Lots of camber around that corner you can really stick the car into. And as he comes round clock for the final time, what sort of time is Dewsbury going to set? Let's find out. He's going to get another go as he just heads into Paddock Hill Bend, and it's an improvement in time for him, but no improvement in position. But no, he's not. Apologies. That is it. Done and dusted. And wow, what a qualifying here already. So we get ready for race 1 of the evening. And for sure, what's going to be an absolutely an amazing championship. So we've got, let's just take you through your grid. So results clothing, locking out the front row for the first round of the season with Seal and Nijkamp occupying first and second. Yang and Dewsbury line up on the second row with Dewsbury's teammate Watts. Well, it's an all Watts row. 5th and 6th in the 3rd row of the grid with Samson, Jacqueline on the 4th row. Hardy and Van Gool make up the 5th row of the grid in 9th and 10th. Jamie Ayres and Portia Morton on the 6th row of the grid with Covington and Hefford. Then Ricks and Cullinan, Gentry and Rogenbuck, Littler and Ashfield taking up to 20th. And then it's Bolden, Toon and Driscoll to round out your field here. So just wait for the last few drivers to take to the grid. We get ready to go racing here at Brands Hatch in the first round of the season. It's going to be interesting. Who's going to come out victorious? Well, not long to find out in round 1 of the XLR F3 Championship. Waiting for the last couple of drivers to take to the grid now. Let's make that just 1, and then we will be away. Long left now. Dewsbury leaving it right to the last second. I'm trying to keep those tyres as warm as possible, clearly. And there we go. He's on the grid now. And let's get ready to go racing in race 1 of today. As the revs build, so does the anticipation, and we are away. And a really poor start there from I think that was Jacqueline getting a really slow getaway as we head down to turn 1 for the first time, as everyone just about making there's a spinner in the background there. But look at the top 2 really pulling away initially of Seal and Nijkamp as they all falter through behind him. Dewsbury trying to make defend a bit there. He's running wide out of Graham Hill Bend as they come down to Surtees for the first time. He needs to be careful. He's got Watts on the inside of him, but Samson and Elliot Watt, they're tucked up right behind as they come down through Pilgrim's Drop, and you see weaving there, trying to get some heat into those tyres in these early stages. As Dewsbury really under attack right now from Joe Watts as they come down into Westfield Bend, and that's going to be incredibly tight on the outside there. The 17 of Samson getting out onto the grass, and he's going to lose some places because of it. Van Gool and Hardy making their way through. Well, Chris, what an opening lap already.
Yeah, it was mostly quite clean, although that was a little bit naughty. But the problem is, if you get compromised in speed in that section, it's not just the one position you're going to lose. It's as we saw there for Samson. He's lost 2 positions. But, you know, if you're not aggressive at this kind of circuit, you lose out massively. But, of course, we'll see if the stewards necessarily think that was a fair overtake later, because that was very aggressive. But broadly speaking, pretty clean. And I must say, I'm surprised we only had the one driver going off on the first corner, but we have a couple of lockups there, Tim.
As you just see Van Gool and Elliot Watts locked in a real battle here as they head down through Graham Hill Bend. Also someone running really wide out of the background there. Didn't quite catch who that was. But Elliot Watts heading up the inside into Surtees. And they almost touch on the exit. Him and Van Gool all leave for each other like a rash, and they've got a queue forming behind them of Hardy and Samson, who are squabbling themselves all over that 8th and 9th place right now as they go incredibly tight heading through Westfield as they now have to drag it out on the entry into Sheen, but just going to get ahead. Oh, there's contact, but they've sent flying to the outside, and they both earn up. There's another spinner off there as well. That's the 92 there of Roger Morton. Him and his teammate off at the same corner through different incidents.
Yeah, that's a real shame, but it's a sort of crunch point there, and it's not necessarily where I'd say it's the best place to overtake, but it's easier to say that in the commentary booth than it is when you're racing and you're desperate to make up positions. And of course, even more important in this midfield, because we're reversing the top 10 for the second race. If you're in 11th or 12th right now, you're going to be fighting tooth and nail to try and get into that top 10, because that represents a massive advantage later on.
Currently occupying that 10th place is Hefford for now. However, still plenty to play for here in race 1 of today. I mean, Hefford, he's got a decent advantage behind him to Samson, ahead of between himself and Samson behind him. Just over 3 seconds. That's going to be so crucial. I think for Hefford now, surely, Chris, it's going to be all about just staying in touch with Currington ahead of him.
Yep, there's no need to throw away a solid position at the moment. It's you know, there's still 16.5 minutes of racing to go. Plenty can happen. I mean, look how close the top sort of 8 are. It looks like Watts has just had a crash.
No, from the Watts after a great start. That's Elliot Watts off and into the barrier there. That's on the run down to Westfield. And he has been sent straight to the pit, so himself and his namesake Joe Watts, both of Raw Esports, into the pits already. This is what happened to Elliot. Oh, got it wide, out onto the gravel. And oh, the car just snaps there as he rejoined the track, and the car gripped, and it just sent him careering off into the barrier on the left-hand side.
Yeah, that is so easily done, and you can see how desperate he was to try and maintain his position and his speed. And it's easier to say this in retrospect, but maybe it would have been worth just re-entering the track just a little bit more cautiously. But you can see there were cars behind. You don't want to get dragged into their battle, so it's completely understandable why that's happened. But here we can see Carl Jacqueline. Tim, he's recovering very well so far, considering he was in 23rd after the first corner.
He's had an absolute blinder as Jacqueline. As you said, he was right on the back of the field after getting caught up in action in the opening laps. And of course, he didn't get the best of starts either. He lost about 4 or 5 places off the start line. However, to recover up to 12 is a great drive from the Brit so far. He's down 4 places from where he qualified, but even so, Chris, I mean, to drag it all the way back up to 12, he's got to be pleased with that one, surely.
Oh, I think so, and I suspect that first corner incident wouldn't have happened for him if he hadn't have had that poor launch off the line, because it's one of those adrenaline reactions. And again, like we were saying, how difficult this track is. That first corner, if something's slightly wrong in your mentality, it's so easy to go wrong, and I don't think there's any contact. We can have a look here. Oh, and it was with, I think, the 46 was that. So that's Jamie Ayres, who's currently in 6th place. So it's clearly no damage to Ayres' car. So we sort of take it back. Jack was the victim of first corner coming together. But I guess if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen on turn 1, lap 1 of race 1, because everyone is overly excited, I think it's fair to say.
As you just see, talking of overly excited, I've got Rogenberg trying to find his way past Littler right now. This is the battle for 13th place. Something's happened to Hefford. There he is. He's on the left-hand side. You might just call him. Another car off there as well. I didn't quite catch who that was, who they were heading past through, but there is Hefford at what looked like a certain 10th place. We've seen really comfortably as well. No, heading really wide as well there. That's no, it's not Polly. That's Currington, who was getting it really badly out of shape through 30s and now under attack. This is what happened to Currington. Oh, just lost the rear end there, sent spinning on the entry into Graham Hill Bend, and that's what just killed off his momentum, and then it seemed to have gone from bad to worse for him.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Hill Bend is one of those corners, it's a very difficult entry. It's surprisingly kind on exit, because you can take so much of that curb, but if you take too much speed into the entrance, that's exactly what we'll see happen there, especially if your setup maybe is a little bit loose on the rear. It's so easy to lose under braking here, but these are the sacrifices that we make sometimes for setup. And we were saying earlier about Jacquelette's recovery, as Ollie Ricks, it looks like, is now dropping down the order, so we might see him as Roggenberg comes past him here. Yeah, he's towed to the pit. So now Roggenberg occupies that 10th position, and Jacqueline is well within the top 10 now. So it's just goes to show, just because you've had a good first 5-10 minutes, Ollie Ricks, who was up, I think, 9 places at one point.
That's a spinner there off there, Chris. I think that was Driscoll. Yes, it was, who just went wide there and lost the rear end through Druids as these two paddling out closely here. Hefford and Gentry is headed through. Now, I think, well, I'm just going to take a look at a replay. So this is what happened to Driscoll. Oh, got it a bit wide, and then contact there with the 72 of Hefford. And then, as the rear end just escapes from him, and that was it. Done and dusted, and they had to wait for other cars to come through on the exit. Well, yeah, on the outside of Druids there. It cost him so dearly.
Yep, and I wonder if the setup some of the guys are using is just a little bit looser on the rear than perhaps they're used to, or like we were saying earlier, perhaps it's a result of the new tyre model. We've only got the 8 minutes left now, and Nykamp and Seal at the front, we've barely touched on them, but they're within half a second of each other, and that's, you know, they're not going to want to push too hard, Tim, because, you know, we've seen the amount of incidents so far. You don't want to throw away a 1-2, but I suspect we're going to see some pretty hard racing between these two later on.
We've got 11 minutes and 30 seconds left remaining, just about approaching up to half a race distance in race 1. As you see, our lead 2 of Results Clothing pulling away now. Seal and Nykamp currently around about 4.4 seconds clear of Yang in 3rd place, occupying the last podium place. Dewsbury, he is in 4th, and then a great drive from Van Gool and Ayres, both at 5th, 5 places into 5th and 6th respectively. Saxon occupying 7th, Jacqueline 8th, back up to where he started the race with Roger Morton in 9th at 3 places, then Rogenberg at 8 places, your highest climber so far, and occupying that crucial 10th place, which will see him start on pole as things stand at the moment for race 2. As we see Cullinan here trying to find a way past Gentry, still who runs wide. Just put the pressure onto the American, who runs wide, and I think has had connection with the barrier. And it's just going to be how much damage that Gentry has incurred through that one. Take a little look at the replay. This might give us some answers here. We'll just seem to cut the corner a bit too much there, Chris, and onto the grass, and there we go. Contact with the barrier.
Well, sometimes it's the following driver it's a better strategy. You can see they were running slightly different lines there. Cullinan at the rear was just slightly wider onto the entry of the corner, and I wonder if that was a deliberate strategy, just to you know, remind Kansas that he was there. And it often, those momentary lapses of concentration can lead to just those small mistakes, which Brands Hatch is the kind of circuit that really punishes those momentary lapses in concentration. We might see a similar thing here between Samson and Jacqueline. Is this going to happen here? Really, it's just a case of, do you think the driver ahead of you is going to make those micro mistakes? And they are running, again, slightly different lines, Tim, but so far it's nice and safe.
Well, I was surprised Jacqueline managed to hold it there. We just, as we came on board with him, just saw him getting it out onto the grass on the entry into Sheen, but right now he is all over the back of Samson. And can we see potentially a move into turn 1? Jacqueline heads to the inside. He looks like he's gonna get the move done here into Paddock Hill, but no, fighting back is Samson. He holds on for on the outside, and he's still maintaining that position, but surely he's got to yield. And there we go, Jacqueline gets the move done, but well, Samson tries to fight it back into Graham Hill, but thinks twice about it. And Jacqueline up into 7th place.
Well, that's the move of the race so far. That was top quality driving from both drivers there, giving each other the room. You could tell how hard they were pushing because they were looking up on nearly every corner there. But it's nice to see we can have some hard and fair racing, and it's rewarded Samson with 8th place now. Or sorry, Jacqueline was 7th even. Maybe that's the way around we should look at it.
Oh, wow, I mean, surely, the way that Jacqueline, if he can hold on to this, and he's going to have his work cut out. I don't see him making up the 8 seconds that's the gap between himself and Ayres. He's currently occupied 6th place. We've only got 8 minutes remaining. Never say never, but even so, I think Jacqueline already, we're only in race 1 of round 1 here, Chris, but the way that Jacqueline has recovered, he's going to be in line surely, really at these early stages. For a driver of the season with that, it's amazing stuff.
It's certainly been a fun narrative to watch develop, although, sometimes I think it's, drivers like Seal and Nykamp, we almost take for granted just how quick they are. And you can see Seal here has managed to pull away a little bit. And this is in spite of the fact Nykamp has actually got the fastest lap of the two of them, but not the fastest lap overall. That currently belongs to Peter Van Gool at a 15.66, and he's only in 5th, but has made up 5 places. So, it's not a two-horse race, this league, based on what we're seeing in the first 13 minutes of it. I mean, I'm a notorious fence sitter, so maybe I shouldn't be calling this a 2-race league just 13 minutes into a 12-race season. But it's the pace we've seen from the teammates here, it's pretty incredible so far. Although Brandon Yang is only 7 seconds down the road, so not exactly out of it.
He's not, and of course with the 2-race format, it does aid, and I think it's going to be really interesting, of course, with this reverse grid for the top 10. There is your current 10th place position car, Rogenberg, the German, who will be, well, if he can hold on to this place, will be starting from pole in race 2. Something's happened to Hefford. I think he's showing as being out according to our software, so not too sure what's happened to him. He's fallen down through the order and may fall a little bit further still, but I mean, Rogenberg is going to be in prime position, starting on pole, and this is where it's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, as things stand at the moment, what Seal and Nykamp can do, it's not going to be so easy for them as, well, talking about things not being easy, Watts just heading up the inside there into Druids and getting the move done over Gentry. Well, a relatively, textbook move there from Joe Watts.
Yeah, it's also a driving instruction manual, really, for racing. It's a good way of making the move without costing yourself too much time. And of course, with Hefford's retirement, by the looks of it, that's another position gained for him. And Ralph Cullinan, I think, of all the drivers on the grid, will be begging for an incident somewhere further up, because he's probably too far behind Rogenberg to realistically be able to make that move with just 5 and a bit minutes left, although he is currently lapping a second a lap quicker. So this is something to look out for. And if you're Rogenberg, you're going to be looking in your relative and then eventually looking in your mirror. This is going to become very stressful for him in the next few seconds, because you don't want to lose that potential pole.
Toon's off onto the grass on the inside. He thinks he's waiting for everyone to come through there. It's on the inside of Druids and just locking the rear on entry, so easily done, and then slips around on the grass. And, well, you see him just at the top of the screen. You can see his car just sat there waiting for everyone to come through. And that's why he's been sat there for so long. Well, he's still sat there now as Toon, and he's losing places because of it, from doing the gently thing.
I'm sure all the other drivers will be pretty grateful for that uber cautious approach to safety, as it looks like things are starting to Carl Jacqueline.
Oh no, after what was a great start, and you said about Rav Kunnan needing something to happen ahead of him, and it has happened here, Chris, as that is Cullen ahead of Jacqueline. We've got 4.5 minutes remaining of race 1, and we have seen that change. That luck, the luck of the Irish for the Irishman has come home, and this is what's happened to Jacqueline on the entrance into, well, didn't even make 30s. He's outbraked himself, and around he's gone just to compound the issue. And again, as he tries to get the car back straight again, clearly frustration inside the cockpit there for Jacqueline.
And it's so easily done. If you're trying to get a good lap time around here, you have to maximise the track space. And yes, it looks a bit silly from our screens, but that's such an easy mistake to make. And again, the long time to correct after he's gone off, that's adrenaline pumping through your veins. Again, so easily done. So frustrating for him, because he'd probably be in 8th right now if he'd been able to get that car corrected in time. But you can see that battle for 8th is really developing now. We've got 4 cars really in that battle with Morton, Rogenberg, Cullinan and Jacqueline. It's going to take one small mistake from one of those drivers and it will all go madly wrong. But you can see here, Nykamp's caught straight back up to Seal, and we've got a battle for the lead again, Tim.
Exactly. They've got back markers in front. As you see Nykamp there just making his teammate think twice there in the entry into Paddock Hill. They come onto the brakes into Druids, and a bit of a lock-up there from Seal. But Rogenberg, well, he's dropped a place to Cullinan, who's Well, like you said, he needed a little bit of luck, and it has definitely come his way. As you can see, this is going to be interesting because, as mentioned, 4 cars now battling it out. Wow, only 3 of them can make it inside the top 10. So this is how Cullinan got his way past Rogenberg. Wow, that was close. Rogenberg just slow off the exit there. I think maybe he just ran it a bit wide potentially. And wow, he's 11th now. That's Jacqueline. He's got past as well. And it seems to be all going the way. Oh, no, it's Jacqueline spins. And that's put pay to him. So Rogenberg, in a flash, is back up inside that top 10. Hardy has managed to get past Jacqueline as well to make things worse. This is all happening here. These are our 2 leaders. What has happened? Wow, oh, they go 3 wide there. And Nijkamp just slips it up the inside to take the lead for the first time in race 1. Chris, have you had your imaginary starter's gun out and fired it? Because it's like you have, and it's all kicked off it. And something's happened to Seal as well, because he's now dropped 3.5 seconds nearly behind Nijkamp.
I've obviously got magical narration powers when it comes to racing stories, because that was a lovely move from Nijkamp, but also I think props to Will Currington for getting out of the way so promptly. That's very aware driving from him, because that could so easily have led to an incident there. And yeah, I don't think the final results page is going to quite show exactly how much has gone on in this race, because this has been supreme second place driving from Nijkamp to time his approach for the move pretty much perfectly. You could see how hard they were both pushing. They were both taking as much of the track as they could. And yeah, this has been an action-packed race. We've still got probably, I think, one more lap to go once Nijkamp gets to the finish line. We've got 1 minute to go, and he's just coming up to the penultimate corner. So I think we're about to head to our white flag lap. And Rogenberg, who has, I think, been I've driven with him before in other leagues. He often gets the best of me. I've probably got more pace than he does, but he finishes ahead of me, and that's kind of all that matters. And you could say that for quite a few drivers behind him today. They've got more pace, but he just knows how to drive that car safely and avoid incidents, and he's going to it's looking like, and I hope I don't jinx him, he's taking home a pole position for race 2 here.
All while it was happening as well, Cullinan's managed to slip his way past Morton of what looked like it was going to be tough to get inside the top 10. Now looks like he's going to be really comfortably inside there. It's the Irishman currently occupying 8th place. So there he is, as Jacqueline. Now, he's now got, that's someone off the track there. Didn't quite catch who that was. They've just managed to make their way past, but I mean, it's going to be interesting for Jacqueline. I mean, surely, just thinking ahead to race 2 for him right now, he's going to start on the road behind our lead 2, who we've seen how much pace that they've got. As we just see our current leader there, Nijkamp, he's on his final lap, only a couple of corners left to go. But surely for Jacqueline, it's going to be all about sticking with these 2 and using them as a battering ram to cut his way through the field. But we're going to see Nijkamp take the checkered flag, and your victory here for race 1 of round 1 of the championship in, well, what has been a dominant start. Teammate Seal, he comes across in second after leading pretty much all bar 3 of the laps. And Yang is going to take that last podium position in third. But Rogenberg, wow, he is now, let's have a little look. He is getting incredibly close onto the back of Morton. This in the battle for 9th place in these dying stages, and Rogenberg is closing right up onto Morton now. They just need to try and keep it clean here as Rogenberg looks to the outside. He's going to have to carry so much more momentum, but it's not going to work on the exit out of Clark curve. Morton's going to hold on to it. I mean, Hardy closed up right in the background there. Onto the back of Rogenberg, but again, just a little bit too little too late there, Chris.
Well, the cynic in me would suggest is maybe they're thinking, is the extra point for finishing 9th necessarily worth not being on pole for race 2? But I think I might be being overly cynical about that, and it's just giving Carl Hardy that little bit of a tease there that he could he only ended up 0.4 of a second off of being on pole for race 2. So I think I'm being overly cynical in suggesting there was anything deliberate about that. But it's interesting to think about, and I think as well for Carl Jacqueline, I reckon he wouldn't have locked up into the hairpin if there wasn't that knowledge that 10th place equals pole position. If that's just fighting for 10th and 11th, I bet you it doesn't happen.
So let's take you through your race results here for race 1. Nykamp taking the victory. First race of the season. We've got Seal, his teammate of Results Clothing, in second place for the Privateer. Yang rounding out your podium in race 1. XRL Esports driver Dewsbury, a solid position result from him in 4th. Van Gool into 5th with his teammates of Ayres and Sampson behind him for Momo in 6th and 7th respectively. Rav Cunningham, well, he looked down and out, but wow, what a drive from him. Bit of luck came his way. As I said earlier, the luck of the Irish coming his way. Comes home 8th place for safeguard result with his teammate Roger Morton behind him. Alex Rogenbach, well, the German had a great drive and he's got inside that 10th place, and that means he will start on pole for race 2. Safeguard by result driver, another one of them quite close to his teammates, but Hardy just unable to quite sneak it past Rogenbach at the end. We've got Ashfield finishing in 12th with the Privateers of Jacqueline and Currington in 13th and 14th. Watts, he came home 15th for Esports with Ricks, Gentry, Toon, Bolden and Littler rounding out your top 10. Of course, those drivers finishing a few laps down. Wow. This is where it gets interesting, Chris, because we've got a slight little break in the intermission here. We've got a 10-minute warm-up session. A chance for the drivers to reset a little.
Yeah, I mean, there would have been a lot of adrenaline pumping throughout that race, and this is something. So for these drivers who, let's say, don't often do league racing and are mostly sticking to officials, this is going to be uncharted territory for them because, of course, you do the race, you relax, you wind down, you're done. Maybe you hop into a practice session and get ready for the next one, but they've got another race coming up in just a few more minutes' time. And it's a case of how much do you need to decompress, how much do you want to sort of get back out and just get some more practice laps in. Of course, the track will evolve. I mean, the in-sim time right now, it is just coming up to 2 o'clock on the 13th of March for within the sim. It's only 24 degrees on track. It might well get a little bit warmer. I would say it's probably not going to get much colder. But we saw how many people were losing under braking with the rears. The higher temperatures are only going to make that more likely to happen. But equally, it could be said maybe that was just a case of getting to grips with the track and the car a little bit. So I do wonder exactly how much that's going to work. And I think as well, another point I wanted to make is that iRacing doesn't necessarily correlate to just how quick you are in a particular car or on a particular track. I mean, we didn't really talk about him, but Aaron Dewsbury, who's only got 1700 iRating, he finished a very, very solid 4th place, and he did not look out of place there at all because he qualified 4th as well. And you compare it to someone like Steve Hefford, who's got 5000 iRating. It just goes to show you it's not the be-all and end-all of your ability as a driver. So that's been something that I think has been really nice from this first race. It's been quite an equal field in a lot of senses.
It has been. We saw some, incredibly close times up and down the field during qualifying, and it was replicated as well under race conditions where I don't know F3, having commentated on a fair bit of it, that it just run the risk of initially at times of, after you've got over that, normally the first half of the race, depending on the race length, it becomes a bit sterile, and there's not much competition as drivers start to spread out a little bit. However, we did see that a lot during race 1, where drivers were still remaining really competitive and right to the line.
Yeah, I mean, this is the advantage of shorter races, really, is that you don't really, I mean, we do a lot of the European Sprint Series races as well, and they're an hour long, and it's a completely different kettle of fish. I think for open wheel, F3 in particular, these sprint formats, they just suit the car. I mean, you've seen before as well, a small amount of contact usually means that's the end of your race. So shorter races and shorter multiple races allow for drivers to get a measure of revenge. Is not maybe the right way of looking at it, but a measure of redemption, I think we'll call it. So there'll be a few drivers that have had a lot of pace that had incidents and didn't finish near the top that might be worth looking to see how they come through. Ollie Ricks is one of those names. He looked like he had pretty good pace and finished, I think, a lap down in the end. But it's whether or not they can take advantage of, like you said earlier, have those lead too. Are they going to be able to punch a hole through the midfield as they make their way through? It could well be, as much as we've seen with Nycap having the extra pace, if he's not necessarily quite as good at getting through a packed midfield, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win every race. So I think that's going to really separate out the drivers who can hot lap well from the drivers who can race well. Not that there's anything wrong with just being able to hot lap well. He says not being able to do it himself.
And I've seen you mentioning about those track temperatures, and of course, we alluded to it a little bit during qualifying and with the new tyre model as well. It's, I mean, how tricky potentially could it be for some of our drivers, where you've got this element of, like you were saying earlier, where having to relearn the car potentially, and I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, could it be also a little bit of an element where actually the new tyre model may suit some drivers who maybe weren't as competitive previously, but now find themselves being very competitive, and vice versa as well?
Well, yes, exactly. And I think some of that will feed into how you set up the car as well, because people can obviously mitigate tyre philosophies with a setup. I mean, using a personal example, if you go back all the way to autumn 2020, the F3 car went through another change with the tyre model, and it went from being pretty planted pretty soon into the race. I'd say it normally only took 3 or 4 minutes to warm the car up, and then it was just planted throughout. And they changed it for roughly an entire season in the end to, if you over push the car, you'd lose so much grip. And in theory, that would have suited me. I was quite a smooth driver, but as it turns out, I'm a smooth error-prone driver. And those errors just made it impossible for me to keep control of the car, because I was just putting too much temperature into the tyres. And mercifully for me, they changed it, not all the way back, but the philosophy went more back to having decent grip throughout. So I just think, right now, those drivers who are maybe more adaptable and maybe more willing to put up with less grip, they're the ones that will see more success. So perhaps be the drivers that work better with looser cars. And that's also why we're seeing so many off tracks here at Brands Hatch, because it's a circuit that demands so much precision. As we see our race winner going wide, just showing just how difficult it is to control this car right now.
And talking of controlling the car, now this championship runs with a fixed custom setup, which I know sounds a little bit contradictory. Obviously, it is a custom setup used, but all the drivers using exactly the same setup for the race, well, both races per round. And I'd imagine, Chris, that just creates a bit more of a level playing field.
Yes and no, because I guess the trouble is, and we were discussing this before the race as well, that every driving style is going to suit a different setup philosophy in a different way. And what I think it's nice in the sense that if you provide a setup, it just gives drivers more options, because not all of us are setup wizards. I mean, in theory, I know how cars work, and in theory, I know how setup changes can affect a car, but I've never personally been able to develop setups in a way that affects meaningful change for me. So I think for drivers who are in the same boat, it's nice to be able to just plug a setup in and go. And to be honest, beyond the top echelons of a racing field, your setup isn't necessarily going to be the reason you're not winning. It's always going to be that you're not necessarily hitting your lines as well as you can. Which is a huge source of frustration for, I reckon, about 90% of us, because it feels like we're going as quick as we possibly can, and there just happen to be these absolute wizards going 2 seconds a lap quicker that you just think, well, how are they taking those corners 10 miles an hour quicker than I am? But it is genuinely just a case of practice makes perfect, which is not the answer I think most of us want as racing drivers. We want that magical fix that makes us 2 seconds a lap faster, and we want it now. But no, it's why this warm-up is a good chance for people to just learn from that first race. Just, make sure they're fully understanding how this car is interacting with the circuit. And to be honest, Brands is such a good circuit to learn at because of all the different cambers. You've got so many different types of corners. You've got some fast and slow corners, different amounts of braking points. You can learn a lot from just, what is it, off the top of my head, it's 13 corners. I'm going to look this up, so it's something I should know off the top of my head. It depends what you count as a corner, but it's between 10 and 13. But is Dingledale a corner? Some track maps will say yes. Philosophically, I'd say no, because it's Sheens that you're coming around. But yeah, we could argue this all day long, I reckon.
You could do it. It's like the perennial argument of turn 2 at the Red Bull Ring. It's, what people would call turn 2 would be Remus, the tight right-hander, which you have to miss the apex of. However, actually it's classed as turn 3 because the left-hander leads up to it. Although it's more of just a kink, because the MotoGP that visits there, they have to take it as a corner. That's why it's actually classified as Remus is classified as turn 3, whereas many would argue it's actually more like turn 2. But, well, enough of our meandering during the warm-up period there, and as the drivers take to the grid for race 2. Of course, we've got Rogenbeck on pole with Morton alongside him. Cullinan and Sampson on that second row, with Ayres and Van Gool on the third row. And we just wait for the last few drivers to take to the grid. As we've got, of course, our race winner starting from 10th place due to that top 10 being reversed. The grid forming up from race results from race 2, but here we go. Let's get ready to go racing in race 2, and we are away. And you see Jacqueline are getting the best of starts in the background there once more. But as we come through turn 1 for the first time, everyone's sweeping through, and looks like they've all made it through cleanly. So we head up to Druas for the first time, just on the outside there. Nords, Dewsbury, he's off. He's fallen right down through the order, and there's another spinner there as well. Jacqueline locked into the middle of a 3 wide. That's not going to end well. He just has to lock up to back out of it there. This is the spinner in the background. I think Bolden and Gentry caught up. Connection there on the outside of Graham Hill Bend. But up the front, Cullinan is pulling away, and it's all about this fight that's happening behind him. There's Morton, Ayres, and Rogenbeck all squabbling over that second place. Rogenbeck just losing out there a little bit, dropping a couple of places. He was in pole position. He's now down to 4th place. And all while this is going on, Cullinan is clearing off into the distance. As we see Hefford, he's had a great start, up 10 places so far. But Morton under a lot of pressure right now from Ayres. And Rogenbeck, he's not far behind. Likewise, Van Gool, Yang, Steele and Nykamp, they're a couple of places off top 2 from race 1. As we come on the exit, Clark curve, and oh no, running wide there. That was Yang, wasn't it? He just ran it out wide, and he's lost a load of places already there, Chris.
Yeah, it's been a much busier first lap than the previous race, and it's still going on here with the 92 of Morton trying to get back past Ayres. I do think this is now, based on the pace we saw in the first race, this is now Cullinan's race to lose. He was absolutely rapid coming back up through the field. Not that Jamie Ayres is a slouch, and he has only got a second and a half, so maybe I'm jumping the gun. But I think a shout out to Steve Hefford, who started 21st. He is already up to 11th, so who needs that reverse grid to make up places, eh?
Wow, so Dewsbury just being shoved out wide there, but Rogenbeck loses another place. That's Seal and Nykamp heading the way through. They're tucked up right behind one another, forming a bit of a train there to sneak through. Oh no, it's running wide there. That's the 92 of Roger Morton. Oh, and contact there on the exit. That was with Nykamp and our top 2. From race 1, they're already up to 4th and 5th place. Rogenbeck looks like he's going to lose another place as Watts heads through. Oh wow, Rogenbeck at the moment, the German, just feels like he's in reverse a little bit, just getting pushed offline, and it's so hard, isn't it? Chris Always Yang just locks up, nearly ends up in the back of Morton, who heads straight into the pits. But now Yang, he's in trouble because here comes Currington heading to the outside, but Hefford, he wants a bit of the action. Already up 10 places, 3 wide into turn 1. This got in well, and it doesn't. Hefford just about getting away with that one as Morton, you see him down in the pits. Wow, Sampson had him in a big lunge from the inside there and just slips it straight up the inside of Littler and Dewsbury, who are now squabbling out behind him.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of presuming that everyone's going to have the same braking points and the same level of pace, but we're going to have a replay of this 3 wide here. That was an inevitability. Will Currington there. Really, I mean, someone had to back out. I can understand why no one did, but when you're on the outside of 3, perhaps discretion is the better part of valour in some situations. I don't think he's particularly at fault for that incident, but he is the unfortunate loser of that situation. Very, very brave of Steve Hefford to go through the middle into Paddock Hill at Brands Hatch at any point in time in any car. He's lucky to still be on the track, really, but No, I think I definitely spoke too soon about this being Cullinan's race to lose, because Ayres and Gould and Seal and Nykamp and Watts, really, these are all drivers with good pace, and they are all within 5 seconds. I do think Roggenbuck as well. I think he was letting people through because he's now only a second behind Watts. And he's doing under 117s. I think he just felt like he was out of, not quite in the league of the drivers around him, wants to have a safe race and get round. And that's perhaps paying off, because you look at some of the drivers who have already had to retire or are well out of position. There are some quick drivers back there. And sometimes, yeah, that cautious approach can reap benefits.
Well, as you see, Jacqueline trying to make advances on Yang there, but under a bit of pressure from Hefford, as Cullinan, just manages to extend the gap out to second place by about a tenth on the last lap, as Jacqueline, Hefford not content with it being up 11 places so far. He wants 12. Jacqueline goes defensive to the inside on the run-up through to Pilgrim's Drop, around the outside in spectacular fashion goes Hefford. Wow, Chris, you don't normally get a move done there, let alone around the outside of Hawthorne Bend.
Yep, it's a very, very brave move. It's not over yet, though, although Jacquelette's pushing very hard, and that's going to give Hefford a bit of breathing room now. Now he can go and chase Yang.
Well, Jacqueline now under pressure from Ricks as he looks to try and make his way past as they come through the final corner Clark curve. And Jacquelette's just going to give himself a little bit of breathing space there. The entry just compromised a little bit from Ricks as they come across the start-finish line. Out onto their fourth lap here in race 2 as they descend practically down Paddock Hill Bend. Oh, wow. What an opening first few laps here. We haven't even completed 6 minutes in race 2, but so many changes have already happened. And Cullinan still leading the way by 1.1 seconds. Ayres in second, Van Gool third. Seal and Nykamp, they're up to 4th and 5th. With Joe Watts, he is in 6th of 9 places. A great start from him. Roggenbuck 7th. 8th is Yang. Steve Hefford up 12 places. That's right, 12 places into 9th. Carl Jacquelette still occupying, when you see just in the background there, occupying that last place inside the top 10. But it doesn't count for anything in race 2. Purely race position. But here we go, Seal. What can he do now, Chris? They've got a gap. Himself and Nykamp got a gap of about 1.8 seconds to Van Gool ahead of them. It's going to be quite tough for them to catch this one up. We know how quickly they are. We saw the gap that they both pulled over Yang in race 1. However, catching is one thing, but passing is definitely another.
Oh, for sure. And Seal was actually half a second slower than Van Gool last lap. And this is sort of the pros and cons of some of these two are coming through as teammates. So Nykamp isn't going to be especially, he won't be fighting Seal because they know they can work together to try and bridge that gap. But if Seal is not able to bridge that gap, what do they do? Do they do the team orders? Because that's going to cost Seal even more time. Or does Nykamp have to sort of stick behind Seal here and then just sort of trust in his teammate? And it actually looks like they might be doing some team orders now, in fact. So I feel super validated for coming up with their strategy as they did it. Turns out I do know what I'm talking about.
There you go. Well, you see Yang, they're now 6 seconds behind them. This is how Nykamp made his way past Seal. And well, I think you're definitely right there, Chris. Seal definitely seems to be backing out and letting his teammate through as they look to work together to close up onto Van Gool, occupying the last podium place for now. What can they do? It's going to be interesting to see. We've got 12 minutes left remaining in race 2, and we'll find out. They're just coming into view in the background there against two of our top 3, Ayres and Gould. Even Van Gool right now, surely it's time to get on the attack and get past Ayres. So at least you've got a bit of a gap between them, as you see Roggenbuck just heading past Jacqueline there. Sorry, Jacqueline other way around. Apologies, Jacqueline heading past Roggenbuck. But wow, I mean, Van Gool surely needs to be thinking about putting the hammer down and getting past Ayres. As we just see, this is what's happened to Driscoll. He's stalling down through the order. Oh, and the rear end getting away from him there into Sheens. So easily done, Chris. He's not the first person to do that, and certainly will not be the last.
I can guarantee you pretty much every driver that's driven the F3 round Brands Hatch has done that at some point. It is the easiest mistake to make, is just hang a tyre on the outside of pretty much any of these corners. As you see, Rick's in front, who's pushing very hard, having just got past Rogenbook, doing it himself here. And you can see Rogenbook not very aggressive coming through Sheen there. It's a corner where you can make up so much time, and it's probably a bit untidy at the moment. I mean, this is the struggle of you going backwards, and he's letting Watts past us now as well. Oh dear!
No,
that's not great.
No, it was, well, I'm not sure if he was trying to let him pass or how that one was playing out, but Rogenberg just, Samson just heading past him. Watts is headed to the pit. Well, I think Joe Watts thought he was letting him through there. Rogenbuck maintained in a slightly slower pace, and wow, Rick's Watts shut the door on him. Apologies, and the car was still there, and it ended in disaster. But while this is going on, that's Bolden. Oh, a bit of a connection with the wall there, broken suspension. So that's his race done and dusted. But yeah, while that was going on, Nightcap and then instantly Seal displacing him with fastest laps of the race. 1:15.61 is now what that stands at. As Jacqueline trying to chase down Hefford, who's now at 14 places. That's right, 1 of 4 places for Hefford into 7th. However, Jacqueline now desperate to try and make that 13 as he's trying to find a way past. There's not a gap there. Hefford not squeezing that gap down, not letting Jacqueline pass, and also there's a cover off the inside into turn 1. Jacqueline needs to get a good exit out of Paddock Hill Bend on the run up to Druids. Can he find a way up the inside of this contact? Yeah. This contact, and he knows. Well, it was ambitious. He sat there waiting, let Hefford come back out on track before him. Great sportsmanship there, but now he's got Samson in between himself and Hefford. And, well, Hefford still 13 places, which is an amazing result.
Yeah, he's doing very well there, and I think it's nice to see that sportsmanship. I think he realised it was an overly aggressive and not particularly on move, and yeah, it's just good to see that. Obviously, it'd be better if it didn't happen, but sometimes it does. And I think Peter Van Gool is about to fall victim to these 2 very quick drivers behind him. Last couple of laps, he's been about 5-6 tenths slower than Ayres and Cullinan. Ayres has actually caught straight up to Cullinan here, so this is going to put a bit of pressure on, and this is going to, I think, really play into Nijkamp and Seal's hands as well. You can see all of the top 5 here, Tim, on the same stretch of track now.
The gap is getting incredibly close between them now. Only 2 seconds separating our top 5 in race 2 as Cullinan practically drifting it into Druids there. Kept hold of it, but wow, he is starting to feel the pressure as he looks back from him. That is Ayres behind him. Van Gool, sorry, more apologies, we're on board with Ayres right now. That is, oh, there's Cullinan, he's gone! He's gone from the lead, and he's dropped 1, 2, 3 places. He's down to 4th, and right now he's going to have Seal surely all over the back of him. He has, as they head up to Hawthorne Bend. He could go from the space, in the space of 2 corners, from 1st to 5th, as Nijkamp runs wide. Wow, Chris, it's all happening here with 7.5 minutes remaining in race 2. Seal runs wide as well.
Steele's had a very untidy lap. He was very wide on the exit of Graham Hill Bend as well, and he's lost that connection with his teammate. So he's sort of, that's you can see there just in the background. This is what happened to Cullinan as well. Just that bit of pressure, similar to that incident we saw earlier in the first race with Carl Jacqueline. It's just, and he's got some friends now as well, which will be slowing him down. But if I'm Seal, this is quite tricky now, and you can see the jeopardy there. He's losing contact with that top 3. Cullinan's not exactly quick either. So what does he do here? An aggressive move isn't necessarily going to do anything, and Ayres is now struggling with the pressure as well, Tim.
Well, Van Gool, you saw just lock him and brakes. Oh, Ayres just about holds on to it out of Graham Hill Bend. But this is Nijkamp's time to strike as he heads up the inside into Surtees. Now it's the drag race down Pilgrim's Drop. Who's going to come out on top? Will it be Van Gool? Will it be Nijkamp? As they head up towards Hawthorne Bend, it's going to take a big effort from Nijkamp, but no, he elects to back out of it. Van Gool just keeps hold of second place for now, but Nightcap is swarming all over the back of him as the two Dutchmen squabble it out for second place.
And Ayres will be begging Van Gool to be as slow as possible while staying in second now, because he will want that gap to stay as big as it can. It's only a second right now, and I would expect Nijkamp to be able to bridge that if he can get through sooner rather than later. But there's only 6 minutes left. We might well only have 4 laps of this race left, depending on how quickly they can get round. And that is not much time at all. If you can have an error-free race from here on out, which is easier said than done, you know, 6/10 quicker Ayres was that lap. That's, oh God. I don't want to make a prediction just yet, but this race is absolutely heaving with action right now.
We saw Seal just running it a bit wide there. He's managed to gather his thoughts, so he has dropped off the back of this group as Van Gool runs a bit wide there. But this is Nijkamp's time to slot through, but you can see Cullinan, he's trying to get a piece of the action and follow Nijkamp through, but Nijkamp gets himself up into second place. Van Gool has to elect to stay where he is, but he's going to give it a good go. He's got a better run off the corner, but he's going to have to surely deal with Cullinan. Now trying to squeeze his way past this contact with Van Gool, and he just has to back out. But now look, that's brought Seal right back into the frame, and now we've got a 4-way fight over the last 2 places on the podium. Just under 5 minutes left on the clock here at Brands Hatch in race 2, and this could go anywhere. This is playing right into Ayres' hands. He's now got a 1.4 second gap out in front of this gaggle of 4 cars that are all fighting with one another, and Ayres will be desperate for that infighting to keep continuing on, to allow him to just grow that gap as big as possible.
Yeah, and you know, just because Gould's been overtaken doesn't mean he can't still do his job as a teammate with Momo, because any time Nijkamp has to look at defending or can't concentrate on bridging that gap, is just precious more seconds that Ayres can try and get away with. You can see that gap is ever so slowly coming down. Nijkamp will just about be benefiting from the draft at this point, and you can see a lot more confident there around that corner. And I think we're going to see a battle for the lead in the next minute or two, if nothing else goes wrong. But can Ayres handle the pressure? We might not even see that battle if Nijkamp's pace can spook him into making a mistake in the first place.
I think he's going to need it, Chris. I mean, Nijkamp was only about, well, he was actually slower than Ayres on the last lap by just over a tenth. So it's going to get interesting. But what I think for me, the interesting part is what Seal can do. We've seen a few mistakes with him as he's tried to find his way past Cullinan. However, it's going to be interesting, that one, as you see this battle all the way down the field between Samson and Hefford right now. Hefford, of course, that contact with Jacqueline, then he dropped to place as Rick's headed up the field, but Samson been looking for a bit of redemption, down 5 places so far. Hefford up 13, 8th and 9th position respectively for those two, as Cullinan now coming under a bit of pressure. Van Gool just locking up yet again into Druids, and that's just going to allow these guys just to space out a little bit now. But this clock is running out fast here, Chris. We've got under 3 minutes remaining in race 2, and also just keeping one eye on that battle for the lead. That's sort of stagnated around about 8/10. Ayres is fully keeping Nijkamp at bay.
Well, Ayres is responding. Nijkamp went 0.8 of a second quicker last time out and set the new fastest lap of the race, which was previously held by Michael Seal, who I think deserves an award for driving this car in the most cinematic fashion. The last 3 laps, it's been really, really fun to watch him throw that car around. He's seemingly very happy with the loose rear end, which is always great from a broadcast perspective. But Ayres, you know, 8/10, that's a comfortable enough gap with 2 minutes to go. All the pressure is on Nijkamp now because he is running out of time to make that move. And even the smallest amount of pressure is going to lead to a mistake. And look, Van Gool is catching up now. He's only 3/10 behind. I think Ayres at the moment, he's in a much better position than he was 2 minutes ago, I would say, in terms of trying to win this race, but it is far from over just yet.
We've got 1 minute 45 left on the clock here in race 2. Who's going to come out victorious? Will it be Ayres? Will it be Nijkamp? Malcolm Van Gool or maybe even Cullinan and Seal suddenly just plucks something out of the back out of the bag in the final depths. We look back from our race leader Ayres. He goes defensive very early. He knows Nijkamp is tucked up in his slipstream. That gap's down to only 3/10 of a second. Our top three comfort by under a second right now. As we come down through Westfield and head through Dingle down on his stairs. Ayres has gone wide, and this is going to allow Nijkamp surely to slip it up the inside. And Ayres is off track again. Once more, Van Gool takes second place. Oh, wow, he did well to hold on, but now he's going to be in trouble because Cullinan's now all over the back of Ayres. And Ayres could drop from first to fourth. As here comes Cullinan, the Irishman. Oh, and he bumps. And there's contact between himself and Ayres. And it's all gone wrong. And that is race done and dusted with that broken front left suspension, Chris.
That is such a shame. He was racing so well, and the pressure just told in the end. And again, we've seen it from so many top quality drivers today. You just go an inch or two too wide, and it's pretty much game over. But Nijkamp has not got this sewn up. He's still got Gould just half a second behind, although Nijkamp seems to be incredibly strong through Surtees. He was regularly going 0.3 of a second quicker than Ayres coming through there, and this is just what happened coming through the final corner between Ayres and Seal. And yeah, not a huge amount he could have done there, and he's just a passenger once that contact happens.
It was Cullinan just trying to sneak it through there up the inside, and wow, he got it done, but in some may argue controversial circumstances due to the contact between those two. But so he's looking like he's going to have to settle for fourth place, and Nijkamp, wow, he is on course. He's got one corner left to go as he heads down Clear Waste. Can he make it 2 wins from 2 here in the championship? And as he comes across the start-finish line to take the checkered flag, he makes it 2 wins from 2 in the XRL F3 Championship. Van Gool finishes second. Ralph Cullinan occupies that last podium place. This is why it's not done and dusted here, as Sampson having to go Hefford right to the line, but it looks like Hefford's going to hold on to it at 14 places. He started right at the back and he comes home in 7th, as we've seen Rogenberg now all over the back of Littler. He's trying to get himself up into 11th place in the dying depths here. They've got around about a third of a lap remaining as they head through Westfield, through Dingledale, down into Sheens. And Rogenberg is running out of time now, and this looks like he's going to be over and done with. Of course, he started on pole after getting in 10th place during race 1, and wow, a bit of a drift in and a flick in there. But Littler's going to hold on to 11th place.
Yeah, I don't want to read too much into it, but I think Rogenberg, similar to me, couldn't handle the pressure of being at the front, and actually, ironically, had a better race 1 starting way down the back to finish 10th, and he finished 12th here, down 11 places. But you know, we live and learn, and 12th is still a reasonable result. I mean, he brought it home, which is more than several drivers can say. Not necessarily any individual's fault, but that battle we had for that top 5, that was some properly good racing we had this evening.
It was. We had some mad racing, but let's just take you through your results here. From what I think we're just waiting for the last couple of cars to come across the line before we can bring you those. But wow, Chris, some epic racing already, and this is only round 1 of 12.
Yeah, it bodes well, and I do think the heat formats, the double race and the reverse grids, I think for this kind of racing, they're perfect because we want to see close racing between the drivers. It's what we got this evening. And I think for the most part, pretty clean as well, I would say. I mean, there were the odd few incidents, but it did look like it was very difficult to control that car out there this evening.
Let's take you through your Class 5 results for race 2. Nijkamp making it 2 wins from 2 here at Brands Hatch in round 1 of the championship. Momo driver Van Gool comes home in 2nd, with Ralph Cullinan occupying that last place on the podium in 3rd. Michael Seal, well, couldn't quite, in the end, hook it all together to come past through the field like his teammate did, but still a strong 4th after starting in 9th. Yang, he drifted away a little bit after earlier incidents, but he'd be happy with 5th place. Rick 6th, Steve Hefford, as we said, at 14 places. I mean, Rick's ahead of him was up 10, but even so, 7th place for Heaven in the end for the Momo driver with his teammate Samson just behind him in 8th. Tug Jackalette, he is second highest of our privateers in 9th, with Dewsbury occupying the last of the top 10. There was Litter in 11th. Rogenbuck, of course, started on pole, fell back down through the field to finish in 12th, with Toon 13th. Ayres in the end, after that contact, meant he had to retire. It means he comes home in 14th due to Currington being a lap down in 15th. Likewise, we had Hardy, he was a lap down too. Gentry, Winter, pretty much our retirees now, with Morton and Gentry classified 5 laps down. Joe Watts, we lost him on lap 6. Bottleton, we lost in 20th. We lost him on a lap 5 with Driscoll, also on lap 5 in 21st, with Ashfield and Elliot Watts rounding out your field. We lost on the opening lap. And wow. I mean, Nykamp also picking up the fastest lap there inside the top 10. And something I'm rather unsurprisingly see so hard he was pushing it. Jamie Ayres picking up the fastest lap of drivers not within the top 10.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about that rule is it's not going to be as nice for Jamie as having a race win, but you have got that consolation point. And who knows, if we get to the end of the season and he wins it by 1 point, then it will have all been worth it, won't it?
It will be. I mean, I think this is where it will come in so handy for our drivers because, those extra points could make all the difference come the end of the season.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, we're far from over, and I think also, Nykamp having taken 2 wins from 2, it doesn't necessarily make him, he's not the nailed-on favourite for this championship. And of course, we've got a few drivers missing that weren't able to make it this week. So I know John O'Lilly couldn't race, Cesar Lopez couldn't race either. So there's still some top talents to come.
That is indeed, and wow, it's been another absolute. It feels like an absolute lifetime. Just the amount of action we've already seen in round 1 of the championship. Wow, we've still got another 11 rounds left to go, and 3 more of this European section of the championship. But from myself, Tim Cox, Chris Rowlands, and Sean Cranleigh-Swash, we'll see you in a week's time as we head to Silverstone.